Hello everyone. Welcome to this channel Jikook universe. In this video we will discuss something interesting and definitely a shame to miss. Come on, watch until the end. There was no official announcement. No teaser. Not even a hint from an Instagram story or previous social media update. It was a day like any other. Until a small notification appeared on fans' phone screens. A short sentence that instantly made thousands of hearts flutter. Jungkook and Jimin are live now. Not in a studio. Not in a practice room. Not in a hotel. Not a place they often choose. But this time the setting was different. Livelier, wilder, softer. The camera opened on a scene almost too beautiful to be real. A stretch of warm beach sand, waves gently crashing against the shore, and a sky slowly changing from orange to mauve. It was an unusual sunset. And they, sitting side by side amidst that landscape, didn't look like two global idols performing for millions. They just looked like two human beings enjoying each other's company, and allowing the world to watch for a moment. Jimin sat cross-legged, wearing a comfortable thin beige sweater and a bucket hat that slightly obscured his eyes. Jungkook, next to him, wore a dark gray hoodie and casual pants, his hair tousled in the sea breeze. They didn't speak immediately. The camera simply captured a moment of silence that wasn't awkward. A silence that felt incredibly honest. The kind of silence that can often only be shared with someone you truly trust. Before them, a small wooden table was filled with fresh seafood, grilled shrimp, clams, squid, a few pieces of fruit and two cold drinks. It all seemed very ordinary, but in that simplicity their beauty shone through. A dinner not prepared by a fancy chef or production team. It seemed like this was their plan. Pure, spontaneous, full of a desire to share. "Are you sure we're live now?" Jimin asked quietly, turning to Jungkook. Jungkook nodded. "I want to keep this night in my memory. But I think it'll be more memorable if we share a little with them," he said, pointing to the camera, then looking back at Jimin. "But the rest is still ours, okay?" Jimin chuckled softly. "Deal." They began to eat while making light conversation. Comments poured in like a flood. Thousands of fans reacted, sending emojis, greeting them, and praising the sunset that looked like a painting. But most of them were silent because what they were seeing was more than just a broadcast. It was like peeking into the private world of two people who were usually so private. And now they were letting the camera in, if only for a moment. "Do you remember," Jungkook said, chewing slowly, "when we first went to the beach as trainees?" Jimin laughed. "Water was the thing you were afraid of?" Jungkook made a face of mock annoyance. "I'm not scared, I'm just careful." They laughed together. A laugh that wasn't made for the camera. A laugh that came from old memories, from a long journey, from a friendship that had changed shape through the seasons. From teenagers who once lived in a cramped dorm to two grown men who could now choose any beach to sit on. They then fed each other. Jimin cut up a shrimp and handed it to Jungkook, who accepted it without a word. There was no overt gesture. But the way they paid attention to each other, wiping sauce-stained lips, holding trembling hands as they held glasses because of the cold, or lifting their hoodies to keep the wind from hitting their necks, was all a language that needed no translation. It was a form of intimacy only understood by two people who had known each other for too long. Then came the quietest and most thrilling moment. Jimin was talking about the color of the sky when Jungkook's hand slowly moved toward his. Unconsciously they held each other. It was light, gentle, but meaningful. The camera didn't zoom in, didn't dramatize it, but it was enough to make thousands of people stop breathing for a moment. "You know," Jungkook whispered, barely audible, "the sky is beautiful. But you're prettier." Jimin turned his head quickly. His eyes widened, then he laughed in embarrassment. "Ish, you're crazy." But he didn't let go. In fact, he tightened his grip. A few minutes passed and they began reading the comments. One fan wrote, "You look like a couple on your honeymoon." Jimin read it quietly, then looked at Jungkook. "Listen, they're honeymooners." Jungkook turned his head with a small smile, then said without hesitation, "Yes, I am." Once again Jimin laughed, but his face turned slightly red. Embarrassed but not denied. Maybe because at some point it wasn't a joke anymore. The sky was getting darker. A small lamp on the table was turned on. The soft orange light illuminated their faces, casting thin shadows across their jawlines and cheeks. They looked tired but happy, comfortable, safe. Jungkook leaned his head on Jimin's shoulder. The sunset is over, but I don't want this night to end too soon. Jimin didn't answer. He just nodded slowly, then turned to the camera. I want to stop here. Let the rest be ours tonight. And with a single touch, the live broadcast ended. The screen went black. But behind that dark screen, the hearts of the viewers were still trembling. Thousands, millions of people stared blankly at their phones, as if wishing they could turn back time to just a few minutes earlier. Because what they had just witnessed wasn't just two idols having dinner on the beach. It was two hearts finding a home in each other. Two people who, despite growing up in the public eye, were still able to create a space where love could grow in silence. That night, the beach witnessed something greater than a live broadcast. It was a night where the world was given permission to peek into the softest, most honest, and most human place. A place inhabited by Jimin and Jungkook. And perhaps for the first time, everyone agreed. Love doesn't always need words. Sometimes just the sunset, the sound of the waves, and a handshake that never wants to be let go is enough. The live broadcast lasted only about 40 minutes. But its impact? Immeasurable. When the phone screens went black, thousands of people still sat transfixed, fingers still moving, eyes still staring at the blank screen, as if hoping the broadcast would return. But it didn't. And maybe it didn't need to return, because what had been shown that night was enough to fill the space of unmentionable longing. Social media exploded. In less than 10 minutes after the live broadcast ended, the hashtags #JikookLive, #JikookAtTheBeach, and #JiminJungkook dinner date were trending worldwide. The live footage, from their smiles to the way they looked at each other, to that subtle yet moving handshake, was quickly edited by fans and shared thousands of times. Some fans wrote, "It wasn't just a live broadcast. It was a confession. How can silence speak so loudly? Only Jikook." That wasn't fan service. That was real, raw, and tender. Twitter threads were filled with micro-analyses. The way Jungkook looked at Jimin when he talked about the color of the sky, how Jimin seemed to be absent-mindedly fixing Jungkook's hair, how they laughed not because of a joke, but because each other's presence was enough to create joy. Some fans even recorded the sound of waves from the broadcast, then mixed it with soft instrumental music and uploaded it as Jikook Beach soundtrack for sleep. The comments on the video were no less emotional. "I play this every night before bed, it's like I can feel their presence." Live broadcasts are healing. Better than therapy. But not all reactions came from fans. Entertainment media also began writing, in a more cautious tone. Some headlines were ambiguous, as if they themselves weren't sure how to respond to the broadcast. Jungkook and Jimin, just a beach dinner or something more? BTS members' unexpected live sparked speculation and emotions. No words needed, just waves, glances, and two souls speaking. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, in the real world where the broadcast was taking place, the night continued. Jimin and Jungkook may have turned off the cameras, but their little world didn't stop. Under the now starry night sky, the sound of the waves remained the same, and the two hearts, which had briefly opened themselves to the world, returned to a silence that only they understood. Jungkook spun his glass on the table, looking at Jimin, who was now lying on the mat, staring up at the sky. "Hyung," Jungkook called out softly. Have you ever imagined that one day we wouldn't be able to do this anymore? We wouldn't be able to sit together like this. We wouldn't be able to eat together while looking at the ocean." Jimin paused for a moment, then sighed. And it was scary." Jungkook nodded. "That's why I live streamed tonight. So that if one day it really happens, at least the world will know that this night existed." Jimin turned his head, staring at Jungkook with warm yet concealing eyes. "We won't lose this, Kook. Because it's not about the venue or the cameras. It's about you and me. As long as we don't lose each other, we won't lose anything." There was a moment of silence. The sea breeze grew colder. Jungkook then got up and covered Jimin with the thin blanket the catering team had brought earlier. They didn't say another word. But even in silence, the world felt full. And at the same time, all around the world, thousands of people were still talking about that moment. Many lingered in front of the screen and many ended up crying. Not out of sadness, but because they felt they had witnessed something incredibly rare. Unpolished love. Intimacy that wasn't choreographed. Feelings that didn't need to be announced, just shown. The next morning, fan art began to appear. Jikook sat on the beach with the waves and stars as witness. Several fanfictions began to be written that very night. Among all these creative expressions, one thing stood out most. The live broadcast left a mark. Not a sensation, but a warmth. A feeling that lingered deep within. And perhaps that was their intention from the start. Not to shock the world. Not to make a statement. But to share a piece of honesty in a world that is often too harsh. They opened a small door into their relationship, just for a moment, and then gently closed it again. And for those sensitive enough to feel it, it was a gift. Because sometimes the deepest love doesn't come with the words, "I love you," but through the way someone feeds shrimp to your mouth. Through the way they laugh when you find it spicy. Through a handshake under the table. Through the way they end the live broadcast with one quiet sentence, "Let the rest be ours." And that night, the beach wasn't just a witness to love. It was also a place where the world was given the opportunity to believe again that warmth still exists. Love doesn't need to be announced. Sometimes it just needs to be felt. And Jikook? They let us feel it. Thank you for accompanying the sweet story of Jimin and Jungkook today. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss their next special moment. See you in the next video, Jikookers.